What's going on, guys? It's Nick here, back with another video. It's Wednesday, it's time to go over my favorite trade targets this week. We'll start off with everyone's favorite team right now, the Cleveland Browns. Deshaun Watson is playing some of the worst football I have ever seen, and while their coach has said publicly that Deshaun Watson will remain the starting quarterback, I simply don't buy it. Only Will Levis has a lower EPA per dropback this season, and you know what the worst part is? I would understand it if he's been going up against like the Steelers, the Jets, the Vikings, some really, really good defenses. His schedule's actually been pretty easy. Home versus the worst, version of this Dallas defense we've seen in years, at the Jaguars. That's a bottom three defense. Home versus the Giants, at the Raiders with no Max Crosby, at the Commanders. He has quite literally not played an above average defense over the first 5 weeks and is 7th among quarterbacks in pass attempts. So you have that combination. You're like, okay, what is he like? Easily top 10 in passing yards. He's failed to throw for 200 yards in a single game all season and has taken 26 sacks, which is 8 more than the next closest quarterback. That's horrible. And it is honestly insulting that we have seen Deshaun Watson as quarterback all season and have not gotten a glimpse at Winston. I guess he came in last week, was 1 for 116 yards, but we have not seen him play more than just it's the final drive, go out there and do something. I can promise you, Jameis Winston is going to be the starting quarterback sometime, and I would hope the near future, but sometime in our future this season, he'll be the starting quarterback. When we get Winston starting, Amari Cooper, David Njoku, those are going to be players you really want on your team. Amari Cooper leads the league right now in routes run. He has a very strong separation score, win rate. He's the first read on a third of the Browns' pass attempts. Meanwhile, we haven't really seen Njoku fully healthy for a game this season, but he should be 100% pretty soon. And given how he closed last season, combined with just the state of the tight end position, it's not a lock that he'd be a league winner with Winston at quarterback, but there's a pretty strong chance that his talent level, how pass heavy this offense would be, how much better they would be, his involvement in the red zone, you kind of start factoring all that stuff in. Very, very likely that David Njoku would be a top 5 tight end rest of season. That would be extremely valuable if you can trade for him right now, because he obviously hasn't produced that level thus far. One final point I want to make is that let's say they go with Deshaun Watson for the next 3 weeks. They lose all their games and they're like, okay, now we're going with Winston. A lot of people would be like, oh, well, aren't they just going to tank, right? Because obviously they're terrible right now. If they keep losing their games, they know they're not making the playoffs. They got to know that at this point anyways, but they're not making playoffs, right? But if that were to happen and they're going to start tanking, I could absolutely see them trading away Amari Cooper to a contender. And the most obvious choices are the Buffalo Bills and the Kansas City Chiefs. Both teams desperate for a true wide receiver one. Shakir is a good wide receiver, someone that the Bills definitely need back. But I think they kind of look at the season and they're like, listen, if we want to make a run, we probably have to get someone better than Shakir. And Kansas City has to know at this point, they can't rely on Juju as their top wide receiver. Obviously, they have Worthy, but Worthy as a rookie, I'm not sure can be their true number one as a Super Bowl contender. So I could see them both trading for someone like Amari Cooper. If even that outcome happens, it's also great for Cooper, for Njoku. So a ton of great outcomes for them right now. They've been hitting the bottom end of their outcome because Njoku's been injured and Amari Cooper is running a ton of routes, getting a ton of targets, but they're terrible targets coming from an awful quarterback. That's going to improve in the future. I think all these scenarios are just more likely to happen. People give it credit for, so I would trade for both of them. After these two, these next two are gross, but I would send out some offers for Breece Hall and for Bijan Robinson. You're for sure not giving up draft day cost. You do not have to give up top 5 overall player value. I would just be interested in seeing how your league mates do value these two. Some people will probably still view them as clear top 5 running backs, and if that's the case, it's probably just not worth actually trading for them. You're not going to get a deal done because we're not trading top 5 running back value for them. I have them ranked 8th and 9th for running backs the rest of the season. And realistically, I think there's a world where over the next few weeks, their situations improve. They score some touchdowns. They're a little bit more involved. And we do view them as top 5 running backs. So I'm not saying they can't be top 5 rest of season. Especially, Bijan gets the Panthers this week. He gets the Seahawks next week. Those are elite matchups for running backs, especially in terms of rushing yards. Jets don't have great matchups coming up, but they have the potential situation change with this like coaching turnover they're having, firing their head coach. And then if we look at the playoffs for Breece Hall, he gets the Jaguars and the Rams. So he gets 2 really good playoff matchups. So even if his situation doesn't drastically improve until then, he's still going to be a player that is involved, has explosive upside. So he's going to have some big games, going to score touchdowns, involved in the receiving game. And then, later in the season, which people also point out, they're like, oh, well, okay, week 15, 16, are they out of it by then? Most of the time, teams, unless you're terrible, are not out of it in week 15, 16. You've got 3 and 4 weeks left in the season. It's pretty unlikely that the Jets are completely out of it with 4 weeks left. Also taking into account that they're going to play the Bills, they're going to play the Dolphins in weeks 17 and 18. So they're going to have divisional games left. There's no way they're completely out of it at that point. So I think it's pretty unlikely that's the case. They're still going to be trying to win in those games and they get great matchups. So point being, situations can 100% improve for both these players. They are very good running backs. This is not a situation where we're like, oh, I guess we missed on talent here. They're both very talented running backs, just not in as strong of situations as we anticipated to start the season. But these offenses also have been a little bit worse than we expected. And if they kind of improve, which we think they definitely can to close the year, these two are worth going after. Again, we're not giving up top 5 overall player value for them. But, if it costs you like, maybe you're deep at wide receiver and you want to upgrade running back. And so you take, a running back 2 along with a wide receiver 2, because you can kind of fill that gap at wide receiver, and you package them together for one of these 2 players. I think that's an absolutely fair trade, and I think that's totally fine to do. I would say these 2 are a little bit risky because there are definitely outs to where they kind of keep producing as they are right now, and you're not getting an insane payoff. But sometimes it's just worth taking that chance on players that, a month ago we valued as 2 of the 5 most valuable players in all of fantasy. And after a couple bad games, are we really willing to say like, oh, they're just like not going to do anything the rest of the season? We don't know that 100%. So I think it is worth taking a shot on these 2. Again, if you can afford it, don't be selling your entire team for them. But if you can afford it, you're a little bit deep at wide receiver, I'd go for it. I'd also definitely go after Jordan Addison if you can. I right now have him as like basically flex value rest of season, but I think that can definitely improve, and I might be moving that up in the like Friday update rest of season rankings. But he's been really, really good. He's got his bye this week, so you can kind of use that as leverage in the deal, especially if your opponent is struggling. They feel like they need a win right now. You can be like, listen, you can't use Addison, so I'll give you either 1 player, I'll give you 2 lesser players for Addison. I'll do, something that can help you out in the short term. But again, he's been good. It's just that the box score results, he had the touchdown 2 weeks ago, but the box score results haven't really been there. But he's been the 2nd best separator among wide receivers with at least 50 routes run. He ranks 9th in win rate as per fantasy points data, and he's coming off a really tough game against the Jets. But like, of course he is, right? Did we expect him to have an amazing game versus the Jets? All we were looking for in that game is, can you stay healthy, don't suffer a setback, and can you look good, look like someone who's not coming off an injury, being really rusty? And if you look at the box score, you're like, oh, was he rusty? I don't think so. 89% of the snaps, 9th best separation score on the week. And not only does that include a separation score, includes like the defense, right? So he's playing the Jets, 9th best separation score among all wide receivers on the week. If you look at +3 win rate, that's something that Fantasy Points tracks. Is basically how often do you get just completely wide open on your route. Against the Jets defense, 3rd best +3 win rate on the week. He's been really good since returning from injury. I don't think the injury is a concern anymore. I honestly think that this week and then next week as well, because he's not playing this week, so he's not going to drop a nuke, obviously. This week and next week are going to be the last time you can trade for, honestly, most Vikings players, maybe not Aaron Jones because of the injury situation, but whether you are going after Addison, you are taking a shot on Justin Jefferson, you are going after Sam Darnold, who's going to be set up well the rest of the season. I honestly feel like the next 2 weeks are the last time we can do that. Week 7, when they return, home matchup with the Lions. That's going to be a high-scoring game. They get the Rams in Week 8. Sounds good to me. Colts in Week 9. Jaguars in Week 10. Like, are you kidding me? Like, who put the schedule together? You couldn't have possibly dreamt up a better 4-week stretch for a wide receiver. So again, Addison, I think, is the top target. But if you are taking a shot on a top 5 wide receiver, Jefferson, unreal target. And if there's any way you can acquire Sam Darnold, I'd be doing that as well. He had a bad game, again, against the Jets, and then he goes on bye. So people who picked him up can be like, oh, okay, maybe he was just getting lucky. It's Sam Darnold. No, he's going to be great rest of season. You definitely want him. That offense is going to drop 4 really strong games in a row. So I would definitely be trading for any of these guys if you can. Final trade target this week is, once again, Jalen Hurts. I know some of you are struggling at quarterback and you really want to make a move for a top 5 quarterback. I think Hurts is just the most obvious target among the top 5. He's second in expected points per game in the season, but is only 12th in actual fantasy points per game. The biggest reason has just been the touchdowns, right? He's only scored 6 total touchdowns. I think it's 4 passing, 2 rushing across 4 games. And while some of that is Saquon, right? Saquon's just going to take more rushing touchdowns than the running backs did last season. A lot of it is also not having A.J. Brown for 3 games, not having Devonta Smith for one of those games that you also don't have Brown. So obviously not going to be a good game for Jalen Hurts. You know, he had by far his best game of the season when both of these two were healthy, which makes all the sense in the world. I mean, this passing offense is headlined by 2 superstar wide receivers. Behind them, it's complete trash. So when you lose one of them, teams can definitely, sell out to kind of hopefully stop Devonta Smith. They are only so successful in doing that because Smith is so good. But when you don't have one, that hurts. When you don't have both, that's really bad. And it really just is like, when you've got these two together, it's the same thing as like Joe Burrow, right? When Joe Burrow and the Bengals offense was missing T. Higgins, teams were selling out to try and stop Chase. Again, not always going to be successful, but selling out to do that and forcing you to win with lesser players, which is going to hurt as a quarterback. As soon as the Bengals got T. Higgins back, everything opened up. You've got your 2 superstars back, all these other role players that are still very good. Joseph is a great player. They're still very good, but they shouldn't be trying to be like the top target on the team. They become more efficient. It's just like everything cycles to where you see Joe Burrow go out there and be dominant. It's why we were trading for him while T. Higgins was injured. The same thing is going to happen with Jalen Hurts. Now you get both these guys back. They're going to be a lot better on offense. Plus, look ahead to the fantasy playoffs. I know, again, it's early to kind of be looking at that, but we always want to be investing in players that have good playoff schedules. Philly is at the Commanders in the playoff semifinals and then versus Dallas in the finals. Both should be incredibly high scoring games, matchups we are expecting Jalen Hurts to go off in. So I have more trade targets on my website, thefantasyfootballadvice.com. The week 6 rankings are up. The rest of season rankings have been updated, and the positional reports are also posted for week 6. So definitely check all those out as well. Again, thefantasyfootballadvice.com. I'll be back tomorrow to break down every single game this week. But that, my friends, is the end of this one, and thanks for watching.